Today, we're talking about the difference between street and racing clutch assemblies and how those differences impact the unit's performance. My name is Ben, my channel is Kame Trick, and it's all about drifting. This is my 240SX drift car behind me. I also drift in the simulator, and I have recently purchased this upgraded monster clutch unit to replace the factory clutch that has been in my V8 powered drift car for so long. We're going to take an opportunity to break everything down, starting with the flywheel. The main difference between a street flywheel package and a racing flywheel package is going to be the weight. The diameter is going to be the same, the bolt pattern's all going to be the same. When you have a street unit, it's really heavy. This is a 28-pound unit, and that causes the motor to have a whole lot of momentum and inertia. It revs kind of slowly, and when you let off the throttle between shifts, it decelerates, it loses revs kind of slowly. That makes it easier and smoother to engage the clutch because there's more momentum to get the wheels turning, and it also makes your shifts easier. You have more time to execute them. Over here we have our racing flywheel. This is a lightweight unit, and it is made out of billet steel, so it's carved down into the shape. It only weighs 18 pounds. That is going to enable it to spin faster. That means my motor is going to be able to rev faster. Even though it's got the same amount of horsepower, it's actually going to deploy that horsepower more effectively and more efficiently because it's not busy trying to turn this much heavier unit. The downside, of course, is that it's going to be a little trickier to engage the clutch, especially from a stop. It's going to require a little bit more engine RPM, maybe a little bit more clutch slip. It's just going to be a bit harsher on the engagement. Let's peel these off and take a look at the clutch discs behind them, starting with the friction surface here. So your stock unit is going to have a big circular friction surface, and that's going to disperse the pressure that the pressure plate applies, the clamping force, across the largest area possible. It's going to make clutch engagement smoother, handle heat a little bit easier. It's also got these really big springs. These springs actually dampen the vibration, just like the springs on your shocks, your dampeners that the car rides on. They always absorb vibration. Last but not least, you have studs that hold the clutch hub, this metal portion, to the friction material, and this clutch has 4. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, and that holds all this together. If you start doing clutch drops and things like that, those 4 posts are going to take all the pressure and hopefully be what prevents this clutch from blowing apart inside of your transmission. Everything about the street unit is designed to optimize comfort and ease of use. It's going to minimize your noise, your harshness, your vibrations. It's going to make the clutch engagement as smooth and easy as possible, working together with that heavy flywheel. When we come over and look at our performance unit here, our race clutch immediately looks very different, as you can see in this friction surface. These are called pucks. This is a 6-puck clutch, so it only has 6 points of contact as opposed to the street unit having a full circular surface of contact. And this is a little counterintuitive, but this actually makes this unit hold even harder than a stock circular street unit would. If this had the same pressure plate, if it was under the same amount of clamping force, this unit has that clamping force spread out into fewer areas. So the force is concentrated in each of these little pucks, and it's kind of like having spiked shoes. So it really digs in to the friction material of the pressure plate and flywheel. That's going to allow it to clamp harder with the exact same pressure plate. The material itself is also a little bit grabbier, a little bit more aggressive to help the total clamping force, and that's going to determine a big part of how much horsepower this clutch assembly can hold. Additionally, these cutouts are going to reduce weight, and as we discussed with the flywheel, the less weight that you have rotating here, the faster the engine is going to be able to rev. Next up, we can talk about those studs that hold it together. This unit has 6 instead of 4, so it's going to be stronger and resist coming apart. Last but not least are the springs. You can get racing clutches with or without springs. Less springs means even less rotating weight to maximize the RPM change capability of the engine, the response. However, this unit has 6 springs. They are smaller. That's going to be a bit of a middle ground and make the car not a complete nightmare to drive on the street, because if you haven't tried it before, you can absolutely drive proper race cars on the street. It's just a huge pain. That covers the key differences between our clutch discs. So we're going to set those over here and move on to the last piece in the puzzle are pressure plates. There's only one really important thing when it comes to your pressure plates, and that is the diaphragm spring. These fingers here that go in this circular pattern over the front of the clutch. And those fingers kind of face up like this, as you can see. When you press your clutch pedal down in the car, that's going to activate the hydraulic system. Your master and slave cylinder will work together to push these fingers down. And when they depress, it's going to pull the pressure plate back off of the clutch. That's how you change gears, that's how you go into neutral, that's how you do clutch kicks if you're into drifting. So let's compare the diaphragm springs of these two units. If you look closely, you'll see that the street unit has fewer number of clutch fingers. The race unit has a fair bit more. And more importantly, the street unit's clutch diaphragm spring is flat. Let's compare that by looking at the back of the diaphragm spring on this racing unit. And we'll go in close here. You'll be able to see that they actually have a dimple built into them. And if you know anything about like building roll cages and things of that nature, you'll know that those bends in the metal actually make the metal stronger. When you see like dimple dies in a roll cage, those not only look cool and reduce weight, but that bend actually gives the metal more strength than if it were just a flat piece. So these folds do exactly that. This all combines to mean that this pressure plate is going to hold more pressure against the clutch. It's also therefore going to hold more power, and the downside to that as a driver is that it's going to take more pressure from your leg. It's actually going to be a harder, stiffer pedal to press down in order to disengage the clutch. If you want to know more about how a manual transmission clutch system works, check out this video on my right. To see some of my regular drifting content, check this video on my left. And if you enjoyed this video, it would really make my day if you would like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. Have a good night, guys. Peace.